Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into nutrients and cognition, fueling the high-performance brain. Look, your brain is a highly demanding, incredibly complex engine. Think of it like a high-performance sports car. It absolutely needs premium fuel and top-tier parts to run at its best. So we're going to explore psychiatric nutrition. That's really just the actual biology of how the food you eat literally builds and fuels your brain, dictating everything from your mood to your memory.
Ever wonder why you crash at 3 p.m.? Yeah, you know the exact feeling I'm talking about. The brain fog rolls in out of nowhere, your eyelids get super heavy, and your focus just evaporates. It's incredibly common, but hey, it's actually not just some random quirk of your afternoon. That fatigue, it's directly connected to your biology. Basically, it all comes down to the kind of fuel you gave your brain earlier in the day.
So, to fix that dreaded crash, we have to optimize two main categories of nutrients our brains desperately rely on. First up, macronutrients. We're talking carbs, proteins, and fats. These are the heavy lifters. They provide the actual energy and form the physical structural chassis of your brain. Then we have micronutrients, your vitamins and minerals. Now we need these in much smaller amounts, but man, they are crucial. They're like the essential oil and the spark plugs that keep all that complex biochemical machinery running smoothly, without catching fire.
Section 1. The fuel. Let's talk about glucose and carbohydrates. Okay, get this. Your brain makes up only about 2% of your body weight, right? But it hogs a massive 20% of your body's energy. And glucose is absolutely the main energy substrate fueling all that neuronal tissue. Actually, your hippocampus, which is super important for learning and memory, is incredibly vulnerable if that glucose supply gets interrupted. If you look at the red line on this graph, a diet packed with high-sugar refined carbs creates a super rapid blood sugar spike. And what follows? A massive crash right around that 3 p.m. slump. But compare that to the green line, a balanced diet with complex carbohydrates releases energy slowly, keeping you right in that optimal blood sugar zone. Basically, refined carbs trigger anxiety and mood swings, while whole grains give your brain the steady, sustained glucose it desperately needs. But how do we actually measure this stuff? Well, we have to look at the difference between the glycemic index and the glycemic load. The glycemic index, or GI, tells us how quickly carbs convert to glucose. A high GI means a massive spike. But here's the catch, it doesn't consider portion size. That's exactly where glycemic load comes in, because it accounts for both the quality and the quantity of the carbs. Take watermelon, for example. It has a high glycemic index of 80, but a normal portion has so little actual sugar in it that its glycemic load is really low, only about a 5. A chocolate bar, on the other hand, might have a medium GI, but it packs a massive glycemic load. So for sustained fuel, both the type of food and the portion size are absolutely critical. Moving on to Section 2, the building blocks, specifically amino acids and proteins. So proteins are literally made up of chains of amino acids. They're the physical building blocks of the entire body, deeply involved in growth and repair. But when it comes to our brain, they are the literal raw materials used to synthesize our mood-regulating neurotransmitters. It's wild to think about, but the quantity and the quality of the proteins we eat, stuff like eggs, pulses, and chicken, directly dictate how our brain synthesizes crucial chemicals like serotonin and dopamine. And the journey these proteins take to actually become neurotransmitters? It is just incredible. Dietary proteins from plants and animals travel right into the gut, where they interact with your gut microbiota. This interaction is a huge deal. It regulates your gut bacteria balance, controls inflammation, and impacts something called the kynurenine pathway. And then, the results of this gut-level processing travel directly up to the brain. This deeply influences mental states like depression, anxiety, and stress. So yeah, there is a direct, physical pipeline straight from your dinner plate to your psychological state.
Up next, Section 3, the protectors. We're looking at omega-3s and micronutrients.
Listen, omega-3 fatty acids aren't just empty calories. They are true cellular guardians for your brain. Beyond having strong anti-inflammatory properties, they do some seriously incredible structural work. They support neurodevelopment and actively maintain cell membrane fluidity. What that means is they literally provide constructive support for the phospholipid bilayer. That's the cell membrane border of your brain cells. By keeping those cellular borders fluid, they really help modulate synaptic neurotransmission. It's kind of like oiling the hinges on the doors of your brain cells, making sure signals can pass through effortlessly. Now let's bring those micronutrients into the picture, specifically B vitamins like B6, folate, and B12. Think of it this way. If proteins provide the raw amino acids to make neurotransmitters, B vitamins are the required cofactors that actually assemble them. They're literally the construction workers building your serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. Folate and B12 are especially essential for supporting our overall neurochemical balance. In fact, deficiencies in these vitamins have been directly linked to higher rates of depressive symptoms, anxiety, cognitive decline, and, believe it or not, even psychosis. Let's add two more massive players to our protective team here: vitamin D and magnesium. Vitamin D is super fascinating because its receptors are widespread across brain regions involved in mood regulation, especially the hippocampus, so it directly enhances emotional stability. Meanwhile, magnesium is an absolute must-have for nervous system stability. It modulates our HPA axis, which is basically our stress response system, and it regulates GABA. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that acts like a brake pedal to calm the nervous system down. The tricky part? Chronic stress actually depletes your magnesium, creating this vicious cycle that we absolutely have to break through our diet.
Which brings us to Section 4, Driving the Machine. Let's talk about fueling for cognitive success.
Okay, so here is how we actually put all this science into action. First off, we've got to step away from the standard Western diet. It's just loaded with simple carbs, saturated fats, and highly processed foods that cause massive inflammation and totally wreck your blood sugar. Excess sugar guarantees an energy crash, while too much caffeine and alcohol disrupt your sleep and spike anxiety. Instead, try adopting something like the Mediterranean or DASH diets. Eat complex carbohydrates like whole grains to keep your glucose levels nice and steady. Make sure you're consuming oily fish like salmon for those highly protective omega-3s. Fill your plate with leafy greens to get your folate. And for snacks, go for nuts and seeds. They offer magnesium to calm stress. Plus, a little dark chocolate actually boosts serotonin. Remember, every single bite you take is literally a biochemical decision. So knowing exactly what builds, fuels, and protects that highly complex, super demanding brain of yours, what are you going to put on your plate for your next meal? Are you going to choose the cheap fuel that practically guarantees a 3 p.m. crash? Or will you opt for the premium macronutrients and protective micronutrients your brain actually needs to thrive? The science is crystal clear, and the choice is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and honestly, I hope this totally changes the way you look at your next meal.